May the games begin, and may the odds be ever in my favor. Also give a round of non-existent applause to your narrator, the mildly impressive Jake Voss. Insert non-existent applause here. See, non-existent applause. After finishing the last left email and arising the following morning, I edited said email, which takes so much time every time, and then sent out said email. I know. A riveting twist to the usual turn of events. From there, I took it out to Five Guys because I was given a cancer gift card to the place, and it seemed like treating my father to a burger would be a good use of it. And then, unlike tradition, we played no table tennis. For some reason, I can't remember. Anyway, after that, I did D&D prep work, read philosophy, and then took a bath. Then Johanna and Grace came home, so Grace, having promised Johanna fun, decided that fun meant sticking Johanna in a corner with nothing to do, while she paid only moderate attention to me as I tried to help her with her math homework for the next hour. And on top of that, I'm fairly confident Grace actually learned nothing, so I feel like that went well. From there, the two aforementioned females and I journeyed to pick up Neo, and then we're singing on all the way to D&D. I've been told my singing skills have improved, which, was the unanimous consensus of the musical gifted people in the car, so I believe it to be true, though I lack a fundamental explanation of the state of affairs. Also, it turns out state of affairs is a very technical term in philosophy, which ties together both bare substances, aka mere particulars, with properties, aka universals, and is of itself, at least according to analytic tradition, the base unit of all reality. So, just so you know, in case you've been using, state of affairs lightly, you could instead intentionally continue to use it lightly, because that's what I'm going to do, and you're welcome. Anyway, we made it to D&D, ate food, had our first player death as Hayes unfortunately passed. Also, my players have now seen my hyperbolic geometry map, and they were underwhelmed. Apparently, I'm the only one that gets excited about functional math that bakes the parallel postulate, but regardless, now you can see it. Boop. Then, once D&D was over, we watched Blue Lock, which is a good anime. Also, I forgot to put my car in park, so it rolled down the street and into the neighbor's yard. So yeah, that was big close, but thankfully there didn't have to be a car parked in his path, though sometimes there is, so there's no consequences. Yay! Still freaky, though. That was a bit of a scare as the night ended. The next day I woke up earlier than I desired, so I tried to fall asleep, but with marginal success. I then basically did nothing of significance until Funime, and then taking a nap, because lol, I was still tired. After that, I did MBTI research. Johanna came over for a drive, and we had a very good conversation, and then Grace and me walked over to Five Guys with her and rapidly quaffed fries because Johanna had to get back, and thus we had only a small amount of free time to eat said fries. And I mean, even rapidly eating Five Guys fries was still very good. From there, Grace and I stretched with each other, because we've been doing that, and then ate food and went to Ratio and socialized, which was a touch painful because, every once in a while, you've got to put in the small talk effort if you want to not fall into obscurity. Then I got home, went on a lovely night walk before watching an episode of Arcane with the family, and did some philosophy before going to sleep. The next morning, likewise, we began with philosophy until Joe came over and we just hung out and got canes. Now he lives so far away, curse ye Joe's kin for moving him, we've decided to be more intentional about trying to meet up and hanging. After canes, we went on a lengthy walk in which I gave a beautiful summary of all the 8 cognitive functions. Probably my finest exposition yet. And I think Joe remembers half of it, so I'm sad. But still, it was good, and we had a good conversation. After that, Braden came over, and we did some CDH battles, where my deck won 2 out of 5, so I lost, but not by much, and the games were all pretty close. We played a few games of a form of Magic that's called Plains Chase, which was a cool twist, and I liked it. Once Braden left, I went on a night walk and listened to some Personality Hacker, and upon getting back, I watched Arcane with the family and started reading the book on flow. The guy who, invented/discovered it. It's been mildly interesting and informative so far. The next morning was Thursday, so I was hungry the whole day. I called with Liam and Joe to sort some stuff out for D&D, and then read some of my flow book, listened to some more MBTI podcasts, worked on some Google Docs, and then I received this beautifully packaged gift from Cheyenne. Look at this. Very pretty. It's a book about some war person. It's called Unbroken, and everyone has told me, everyone I've told about it has been like, oh, that's a really good book, so I'm probably going to actually read it sometime. But I'll wait until a point where I lack motivation to read boring things, and while I have still said motivation, I would rather be productive, even if it is a fantastic book. I then taught philosophy class, where we finally finished Module 1 and started on the good content. From there, Joe talked about D&D with Neo a lot, and I was bored. And then I read through some of my docs along with Cheyenne's letter and went to sleep. The next morning, I just stalled after waking up a bit too early. Karina came and picked me up, and we drove to the hospital for chemo, having a very good conversation along the way. However, once there, to my surprise, this happened. A host of high school students populated the spiral stairs and entertained us for 45 minutes or so with choiring. So that was fun. A little bit weird, but overall pleasant. Karina was a very good chemo buddy once things got started, except for the fact that she does not excel in upholding a solid one-sided conversation. Some people just know how to talk, but Karina, not really. But still, she did her best, and I appreciate the honest attempt. And she came, a long way from pre-trip Karina, so we're getting somewhere. Once chemo was through, I definitely wasn't feeling great, but I never decided to go see movies in theaters with John, Neil, and Sydney, because I was like, well, I'm either sitting watching at home, or I'm, out watching with friends, so I might as well. But it turns out that reasoning was quite flawed. I don't care to detail this particular case why it was quite flawed, but it was quite flawed. So yeah, made it through, but definitely did not feel great and was quite grateful to be home once I made it there. Also, the movie itself was kind of meh. Like, it was good for a Christian movie, but still so-so. Once I got home, I took a bath, felt nauseous, and slept. So unfortunately, this round of chemo started at like 1 in the afternoon, which meant that per the laws of short-term fasting, I could not eat until dinner this time around. And, that partnered with the worst nausea I felt so far. I did not throw up, but I definitely did not feel great. Meant that most of this day was rough. I tried reading some of my flow book, but it was definitely hard to concentrate, and I mostly spent the day watching various things with the family and not doing much before I went to sleep. As a general rule of thumb, the most accurate measure of how I'm feeling is how productive I am. Because I really hate wasting time and not doing things with my life. Thus, the less meaningful things I do, the worse I feel. So just a piece of insight into my psyche. The next day, I had a lengthy conversation with Jeremy Bridges and then a brief conversation with Johanna. Joe wasn't there for an unbeknownst reason to me, and so I carried the conversation of our ragtag social group with the things I've been learning about, and I think everyone was at least mildly interested. I then went to D&D and, really started to feel bad during that session. So as soon as I was able, I went home and took a bath. Eventually, Mom bestowed upon me the Qdoba, and we all watched more Arcane together, which was good. And then, in an unforeseeable turn of fate, the event turned into one of the very few deep family talks we've had about why certain things have gone poorly and how to fix them. See, my mom, dad, and Grace are all primary FI users, so basically they all have the same problems. Hence, I spent like 2.5 hours walking the family through what was happening, and why it was happening, and what could be done to fix it, based off MBTI theory and peer-reviewed psychology that I know. It was definitely a delicate talk, but I think I handled it well, and now we have 2 pages, back and front, magnet to the fridge. So hopefully they can all remember what I said and actually put into use. We'll see if it actually changes things. But still, I'm glad I got to mediate the issue. I'm genuinely pretty good at doing so, not to pat myself on the back too hard. But also, by the time we finished, I was super tired and basically just went to bed. The next morning, I woke up feeling a bit better. I spent a bit of time brushing my teeth, brushing up my knowledge of ENTPs, and then met up with Jake for approximately 3 hours, and he sponsored Chipotle for my time. It was a good conversation, a bit exhausting. I don't know why, but I always feel tired after talking with Jake. But definitely good, and I think he'll be able to use the info I gave him to level up. After that conversation, I did some philosophy, and then Neo and I left early for the Jameses to taste the legendary caffeine ramen cooked in Red Bull. An activity that Joe put together that didn't appeal to me much, but at least you gotta try some stuff. And yeah, it was trash. But hey, at least now you know. From there, we had real food, played D&D, and the players got to get their own pirate ship. We then watched the Chigiri arc of Blue Lock, which is my favorite arc because it's basically Chigiri is me. And that was great. And then we talked for a bit, and I drove Neo home because I was tired and wanted to sleep. The next day, I spent a good amount of time talking on Discord, had Funame, tried to play Beat Saber well, but instead played Beat Saber poorly, and then having nearly run out of Ikea chocolate, so integral to my happiness while consuming philosophy, chamomile tea and Ikea chocolate. I'm telling you, it's where it's at. I decided I would spontaneously hit up Joe and see if he would drive a total of 5 hours with me to restock my supply, and surprisingly, to his credit, he agreed. So we drove to Ikea, which has never been done before, so it was a novel experience for him, and we caught up along the way, and also totally ran out of topics to talk about. There's the one that's the one downside of knowing someone really well is that you lose conversational intrigue once you've existed for a long time in each other's space. We walked through Ikea. I got him Swedish meatballs, whose greatness has been largely exaggerated from my childhood mind. And then we looked at all the rooms and got to the end and ate Seminoles, almost without buying chocolate, which would have been hilarious. But then I remembered my entire purse for coming, and so I purchased 10 bars. Boop. And then we drove back, singing to good music. I introduced him to some of my Matthew Parker songs. Once we got back to Joe's house, Joe decided to call it there, and thus I drove him home, and I chilled. I was going to watch this Nefarious movie, but then the whole Ikea run left me socially tired, so I decided to skip it. And the movie wasn't really a great interest to me anyway. Other than that, I did little things less at night, stretched with Grace, had Discord conversations, studied philosophy, and ate chocolate. The next morning, I did more philosophy and chocolate. I wrote down in my docs some stuff, and then had some big brain realizations. Did Funame, took a nap for 2 hours, but not because I got bad sleep, just because I was feeling tired. And then Mom made us pseudo Qdoba queso, which Grace and I, mostly me, consumed in mass quantities while watching Komi Can't Communicate, which is Grace's favorite anime. I then drove to Liam's place, where before coming I resigned myself to not being productive. So the time was good. Me, Alan, and him got a Merry Mountain cookie, which was way too much sugar, if I'm being honest. We played some Smash Bros. And old as, dial-up Naruto game, and then watched the first 2 episodes of an anime Alan had read the manga of back in the day. Objectively, nothing was accomplished, but I think I did fairly well at being content with the meaninglessness of it all. Still, I actually need to do something more meaningful in my life than that. If a night where eating a cookie, playing video games is the definition of a good time, then we're all headed toward going insane, or at least I am. I can tolerate it for a brief amount of time, especially right now, but especially right now, I need things that matter in a very strong way. I'm realizing ambition and discontent are just 2 sides of the same coin. So I need to make sure I keep flipping heads, or else life is going to get rough in the future. Anyway, just a little tangent. The point is, the hangout with Liam was successful, albeit boring, and I learned something about myself. The next day, I studied more philosophy. My lower back hurt fairly significantly, so Dad was kind enough to try and help me fix it. And whatever he did did help, just not all the way. I then had Funime and released my lower back pain due to a lack of... Oh, and realized my lower back pain was due to a lack of exercise, because that was the one thing I could think of that was really missing from my life right then. And so I decided I'd go on a lengthy walk. And man, that totally helped. First, walks are great, but also, like, it is an exercise thing, I think. So yeah, my back didn't hurt nearly as much once I got back. Anyway, I went on a long walk, listened to Personality Hacker podcasts, bought some Christmas gifts and carried them back, and then read more philosophy. After that, Ben came over, and I discovered he had moved out like a week ago. I didn't actually know that until then. See, he leaves a lot, so I don't really see him all around. So, yeah, I guess out of sight, out of mind. So, yeah, Ben has officially moved into the house he bought, and he stopped by for dinner, and it was good to see him. Mom also made us look through some of David Wade's hand-me-downs, and so it was like clothes Christmas, which I'm largely indifferent toward because I'm like, cool, a new pair of jeans. But Ben was very excited, as apparently all of them were like big name brands and stuff. So yeah, mostly Ben cared, but it still made exciting because he was excited. Then, as that ended, I went over and taught philosophy class, and for once, Joe was actually excited about what he learned. Yay! And then it was super misty out, which was big cool, and literally and figuratively. And so we decided we all go to get Wendy's and sit around the fire at Neo's house and drink hot chocolate. Hence, with a bit of trial and error, that goal was achieved, and my butt got very cold and wet, but it was a good time. Then we all just stayed up till 2, talking about nothing in particular, on the couches in Neo's living room. The following morning, I woke up, ate food, read some of my flow book, and then began the long saga of sitting. Noah, being a virtuous and good man, arrived on time to my house, but Benj and Johanna, being vicious and evil, arrived late. Thus, we rushed over to Neo's house and sat down to begin a 12-hour movie marathon of Lord of the Rings, extended edition. And see, you must understand, I have never read the books, and I've only seen some of the movies, and not any of them in a coherent or orderly fashion. Thus, in effect, this was my first introduction to Lord of the Rings at the age of 22. I know, you may boo and hiss all you like. Here's a picture of us at the movie marathon. So yeah, Neo decided he would enforce the watching upon me, and while originally I conceived it as something akin to torture, I must say the whole experience turned out to be pretty good. For one, he prepared bags of pomegranates, and I ate like 3 of those, so that definitely, buttered me up. But also, the movies were well done, I must admit. They were long, and, they had great characters, and very impressive world building, and a good narrative arc, so, I can't hate on Lord of the Rings too much. Plus, I didn't start feeling pent up and antsy until like the last 4 hours, so even with the super long length of sitting, I wasn't super irritated. So yeah, it was good. We took walk breaks, which was super necessary, and I got to eat food, and overall, I'm glad I went. That ended around midnight, and thus I walked back home with Noah, Benj, and Johanna, where we parted ways, before I decided I would like to walk some more, because I did so much sitting. So I did that, and then once I got back, I read some. After reading, I had a ginormous realization about myself and the social arena, which I think will remedy many a thing, but I'll have to see if it, does work after putting it into practice. And that's largely it. Today, I did some philosophy, as well as some reading. Worked on some D&D stuff. I hung out with John, played some Magic on the Grass, and talked, and then I settled down and wrote this. And that is the latest as far as events go. The other big thing worth mentioning is that come the 20th, I will know whether or not ABVD chemo is working or not, and hence whether it's likely I'll live or not. And so some prayers for that day would be well appreciated. It's not like if the ABVD doesn't work, I'm guaranteed to die, but my odds of death do go up quite significantly. How significantly, I don't know. The survival rate is given for the whole regime, not just like for part of it. So I don't know if the cancer resistant response for ABVD, with the likelihood the B-CHOP will take it out. But I don't think it's super high. Plus, just saying, B-CHOP is a much more nasty chemo, so I just don't want to do that stuff. Anyway, the point is, I reserve the right to be depressed come the 20th, should the news be bad. Though I also reserve the right to not exercise my right. That's the big day when I get to know all the good things. So, yeah, actions and prayers are requested to be directed at that temporal location. All right, that is all I have to say. So until next time.